In the annals of rock and roll history, there are few events that stand out as truly iconic and epoch-making. The year 1979 saw one such momentous event when two legendary rock bands, DefLeppard and AC/DC, joined forces for a historic tour that would forever shape the landscape of hard rock and leave an indelible mark on the music industry. The late 1970s were a pivotal time for rock music. The genre was undergoing a transformation, evolving from its blues-based roots into the hard-hitting, electrifying sound that would define the 80s. AC/DC, hailing from Australia, had already achieved considerable success with their high-energy performances and the raw power of their music. Their 1979 album, Highway to Hell, had solidified their status as a force to be reckoned with. On the other side of the Atlantic, DefLeppard, a British band, was rapidly gaining a reputation for their infectious hooks and energetic live shows. Their debut album, On Through the Night, released earlier in 1979, had introduced them to the world and showcased their potential. The idea to bring these two powerhouse bands together for a tour was nothing short of brilliant. It was a merging of two different yet complementary styles, with AC/DC's gritty, bluesy rock and DefLeppard's melodic hard rock offering a diverse yet cohesive musical experience for fans. The tour kicked off in July 1979 and took the bands across the United States and Canada, igniting a firestorm of excitement among rock fans. The energy of their performances was unparalleled, with both bands feeding off the crowd's enthusiasm and reciprocating with electrifying stage presence. Touring, while undoubtedly exhilarating, is not without its challenges. For DefLeppard, this tour marked a significant period of growth and adaptation. Despite their immense talent, they were relatively young and inexperienced, which sometimes led to technical difficulties and issues with sound quality. However, these challenges ultimately served as stepping stones for the band, helping them refine their live show and lay the groundwork for their future success. AC/DC, on the other hand, were seasoned road warriors by this point, having toured extensively and honed their craft over the years. Their performances on the tour showcased their signature intensity and charisma, setting the bar high for their younger counterparts. The 1979 tour was a defining moment for both DefLeppard and AC/DC. It introduced them to a wider audience and solidified their positions as rock and roll legends. The experience of sharing the stage with one another left an indelible impact on both bands, fostering a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect that would endure over the years. For DefLeppard, the tour was a vital stepping stone that helped them mature as performers and artists. They learned the importance of stage presence, connecting with the audience, and perfecting their sound. This knowledge would prove invaluable in the years to come as they skyrocketed to global stardom with albums like Pyromania and Hysteria. AC/DC continued their ascent, with the 1979 tour serving as a testament to their enduring appeal. The release of Highway to Hell during the same year, coupled with their powerful live performances, propelled them into the rock pantheon, and they would later become one of the best-selling bands of all time. The historic DefLeppard tour with AC/DC in 1979 stands as a pivotal moment in the history of rock music. It showcased the synergy of two distinct yet complementary styles, provided invaluable lessons for both bands, and left an enduring legacy that continues to influence and inspire new generations of rock musicians. The tour symbolized the unbreakable spirit of rock and roll, where artists come together to create unforgettable moments that resonate through the ages. In January 1979, it had invaluable lessons for both bands, and left an enduring legacy that continues to influence and inspire new generations of rock musicians. The tour symbolized the unbreakable spirit of rock and roll, where artists come together to create unforgettable moments that resonate through the ages. In January 1979, DefLeppard released the DefLeppard EP, their first attempt at recording and debut release in the music industry. This self-financed EP was recorded in only 2 days and featured 3 classic-sounding songs including an epic, The Overture, plus early-stage favorite, Get Your Rocks Off, as well as the later-to-be re-recorded, Ride Into the Sun. This release would kickstart the band's career and they would soon become the most talked about young rock band in the UK before recording their first 7-inch single and landing support slots with heavyweight acts like Sammy Hagar and AC/DC. The band would return to Fairview in 1979 to record songs for an intended second EP only for the idea to be scrapped. These songs were later released illegally by Frank Stewart Brown as the First Strike bootleg album. The EP was reissued in May 1979 after the band signed with MSB, Pete Martin and Frank Stewart Brown management. All 3 songs were later used with a different running order as the first DefLeppard 7-inch single in September 1979, see Singles section. The EP played at 33 1/3 revolutions per minute speed. K Fan Club reissued the second MSB EP with replica original sleeve as a white label 7. The first 150 or 500 copies of the release on the red label included a 2-sided signed lyric sheet. Only 1,000 copies were made of this first red label release. One side had lyrics to the first 2 songs. The other side had lyrics to The Overture on the left and the message for Nick Cartwright, see above. To the right was sketch-style art by Dave Jeffrey showing Steve, Joe's faces at the top. The EP cover in the middle and at the bottom Sav's face on the left and Pete Willis's on the right, indicating the band was still a 4-piece upon release before Rick Allen joined them. The sleeves were glued together by Joe and his mother, who also helped mail him out to radio stations, record companies and journalists across the UK. The red label edition can sell for anything upwards of £100. 100 copies included lyric sheet inserts that vocalist Joe Elliott had photocopied during his lunch break at work. Additionally, he and his mother glued the 1,000 sleeves together. The double-sided insert has the lyrics to Ride Into the Sun and Get Your Rocks Off on one side. Lyrics for The Overture are on the other side, along with individual sketches of the band members by Dave Jeffrey. A credit for the band's Nick's a Man Mr. Nick Cartwright was also included because his name was erroneously left off the credits on the picture sleeve rear cover. Without Tony Kenning, the band needed a drummer for the session. So Frank Noon was borrowed from the next band for the weekend. According to Elliott, the EP cost £148.50 to record, equivalent to £800 in 2021, money which he had borrowed from his father. This provided an initial print run of 1,000 copies that the band would use in a concerted effort to get noticed. Released in January 1979, the single was sold for £1, equivalent to £5.38 in 2021, at shows and was handed out to anyone who could help gain the band exposure. Elliott jumped on stage at Sheffield University during a John Peel DJ session to hand-deliver a copy of the EP. Peel obliged by playing the single on his BBC Radio 1 show, and the single eventually made it to number 84 on the BBC singles charts. As a result, gained the band exposure. Elliott jumped on stage at Sheffield University during a John Peel DJ session to hand-deliver a copy of the EP. Peel obliged by playing the single on his BBC Radio 1 show, and the single eventually made it to number 84 on the BBC Singles charts. As a result, the mission was a success and the band started generating press. Helped by radio play, the initial pressing was sold out by the summer of 1979. So the band's first managers had the EP reissued with a yellow label and no picture sleeve. Once signed to Phonogram, the single was issued again, with Ride Into the Sun and Get Your Rocks Off being swapped around because the latter had become more popular. The EP was reissued yet again in the late 1980s to DefLeppard fan club members with the picture sleeve intact, the tracks put back in their original order, and a white label replacing the yellow label. This white label release is the most common release seen on auction sites such as eBay, and also the least valuable, but still can be worth over $20. The Overture was re-recorded for DefLeppard's first LP, as was Get Your Rocks Off, retitled as Rocks Off, which also received a fake audience track in the background of the recording. Ride Into the Sun was shelved until a new version was recorded in 1987 as a B-side to the Hysteria single. The re-recorded version later appeared on Retroactive, but it has additional overdubs and replaces the opening drum solo with a piano intro performed by Ian Hunter. The re-recorded version is credited to Elliott, Phil Coughlin, Steve Clark and Savage, while the version on the DefLeppard EP is credited to Elliott and Savage. In 2017, the EP was released on 12-inch vinyl for Record Store Day and as a digital download for the first time. Free. The following year it was released as a mini CD included with the CD Collection Volume 1 box set. Additionally, all 3 tracks on the EP were remastered and included on the 2020 box set The Early Years 79 to 81. DefLeppard frontman Joe Elliott shares his still vivid memories of observing AC/DC's power and passion at close hand when the then Sheffield teens supported Malcolm Young's band on the UK leg of the Aussie Rockers' Highway to Hell tour in 1979. It was just unbelievably exciting, Elliott recalls. They looked after us. We had good lights and sound, and we went down really well with their audience. There wasn't much socializing, but the overall vibe of the two bands together was pretty damn good. It wasn't that AC/DC weren't friendly, we just never saw much of them. But the one guy who was really personable was Bon Scott. I remember we happened to be in the same hotel as them one night. We had 4 straws in 1 pint, and Bon threw a tenner down and said, "Here you are, lads. Go buy yourselves a round." Sadly, I never had the chance to pay him back. We watched them like hawks every night, Elliott admits. We wanted to learn, and one of the big lessons was the value of repetition, which is a key ingredient to long-term success. Most artists don't want to repeat themselves, but if you want to stay in the game, you don't change your set every night. AC/DC never changed their sound, their look or their work ethic. The Glasgow Apollo shows were the most memorable for me. The first night, I went up to the balcony when AC/DC went on. They started off with Live Wire. And that balcony, my God, I thought it was going to come down with all these people jumping around going bonkers. It was like a fucking trampoline. For a few minutes I was terrified. So I just fucking legged it. I watched the rest of the show from the side of the stage. Bon was an amazing frontman, Elliott adds admiringly. Every night, he wore a sleeveless denim jacket. No shirt, and he was in good shape for a guy who drank so much. But it was the expression in his face that I remember most. He looked like he didn't give a shit. I don't mean he didn't give a shit about being in tune or in time. He just had this facial expression that said he was living in the moment. Sleeveless denim jacket. No shirt, and he was in good shape for a guy who drank so much. But it was the expression in his face that I remember most. He looked like he didn't give a shit. I don't mean he didn't give a shit about being in tune or in time. He just had this facial expression that said he was living in the moment.